The moment I stepped into my daughter's kitchen, I knew something was wrong. The scent of polished granite and lemon cleanser hung in the air, but there was no warmth, no steaming mugs of cocoa, no excited squeals from my grandchildren, just silence. My suitcase still sat by the front door, a plastic container of homemade cranberry pumpkin bars balanced on top, untouched. Brandon leaned casually against the counter, sipping from an insulated coffee tumbler. "Eleanor," he said smoothly, "we weren't expecting you quite so early." I checked my watch. "It's noon." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Right." Olivia stood near the fridge, her arms crossed, her gaze glued to a smudge on the floor tile. She hadn't hugged me, hadn't even made eye contact. My heart thudded. I set down my purse carefully, scanning both faces. "What's going on?" I asked. "Did something happen?" Brandon exchanged a quick glance with Olivia, then stepped forward, arms open in a mock apology posture. "It's just, this year we've decided to keep things low-key, quiet. The kids are at that age where too much stimulation isn't great for them. And with our work schedule—" "Too much stimulation?" I repeated, blinking. "Brandon, I drove 6 hours from Maine. I baked. I wrapped gifts for the kids." "We know," Olivia said quickly. "We're grateful, Mom. We just—" Her voice faltered. "We just need our space this year." That sentence hit harder than I imagined it could. We need our space. It was surgical in its delivery. A clean, emotionless cut. Not, "We're overwhelmed." Not, "Can we celebrate tomorrow?" Just a gentle push out the door, delivered with professional courtesy. I swallowed. "So, you're uninviting me for Thanksgiving?" Brandon raised both hands. "Let's not make this dramatic. We assumed you'd stay at the Marriott again. They're offering a great holiday package. Fireplace, even." I blinked once, then twice. "I came to see my family." He took another slow sip. "We are your family, and we're asking you to understand." I looked at Olivia. Her eyes were glassy but unfocused. She didn't speak. I kissed my grandchildren goodbye that afternoon, promised I'd call them on Christmas morning. Then I checked into a hotel room with a lonely kitchenette and a view of the parking lot. 3 weeks passed, then came the phone call. "Eleanor?" Brandon's voice was warm, strangely so. "We've got a time-sensitive opportunity. Big one, our dream house, but we're in a crunch with the mortgage approval. They're asking for an additional cosigner, just as a formality." I stood at the window, watching snow fall on the cracked asphalt below. "Why me?" "You've got solid financials, no debt. Teachers have great credit. We're not asking for money, just your signature. And if I decline—" He chuckled. "Don't be like that. We're family." The word family felt foreign in his mouth. When I met Robert Jenkins, my late husband, he handled relationships like he handled money, with care, transparency, and long-term vision. Brandon, in contrast, handled them like high-risk flips, charm up front, then pressure, then exit if unprofitable. I decided to see them in person. Back at the same kitchen I'd been excluded from just a month before, the setting had changed entirely. There were pastries from the upscale bakery downtown. Candles. Brandon greeted me with a friendly clap on the shoulder. Olivia hugged me this time, but it felt rehearsed. After coffee and small talk about the children's art projects and skiing plans, Brandon slid a glossy folder toward me. "Here she is, the future Parker estate." The photos showed a sprawling Tudor with lake access and cathedral ceilings. "It's listed at $3.2 million, Brandon said, his voice practically purring. "But if we move fast, the seller's willing to go down to 2.9. We're already pre-approved. Just need a little boost for the bank's security process." "You want me to co-sign?" "Exactly. No cash, no commitment beyond the paperwork. With my next development project lined up, it's a slam dunk." "Then why not ask your mother?" His smile thinned. "Diane's assets are tied up. Complex stuff. You're more liquid. And if something goes wrong?" Brandon's charm cracked slightly. "It won't. But if it did, we'd work it out. As a family." I closed the folder. "Brandon," I said calmly, 3 weeks ago you excluded me from Thanksgiving dinner. You sent me to a hotel. Now, you're offering me a guest house in exchange for my signature? Olivia reached for my hand. It's different now. The kids miss you. We want you close. You want my name on a mortgage? Brandon sighed, long and theatrical. Eleanor, don't let old misunderstandings get in the way of our future. I stood. Let me think it over. He smiled again. Of course. But if we want to lock it in, we'll need your answer by tomorrow morning. As I left, Olivia followed me to the door. Mom, she whispered, please say yes. This house, it could change everything for us. Her voice trembled, caught between loyalty and fear. I reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Sweetheart, changing your address won't change your life. That night I called James Whitaker, Robert's old business partner. After I explained everything, there was a long silence. Eleanor, he said slowly, do you know why Robert spent so much time with me in his last months? Investment advice? In part, but mostly, he was setting up a trust, a substantial one, for you, to protect you from exactly this. I sat down. James continued. The trust matures in 2 weeks, but if you feel you're being pressured, we can act sooner. The air in my hotel room turned electric. Suddenly, I wasn't powerless. I wasn't the afterthought anymore. Brandon didn't know, and I wasn't going to tell him, not yet. If you've ever been overlooked after everything you've done for someone, type 1 in the comments. Your story matters. I was halfway through slicing pears for a tart when the email came through. Subject: Cedar Falls School District. Data review request. I clicked it, expecting routine pension info. Instead, it was a formal notification. Your name appears in records under internal review related to unauthorized access of former special education student data. This pertains to archived files during your tenure at Cedar Falls Elementary. My hand froze midair. I hadn't touched any files since my retirement, but I knew exactly what this was. A month ago, Brandon had asked casually whether I still had any contacts from the school system. He said it might be helpful for a family foundation Olivia wanted to launch for children with learning needs. I'd said I could ask around, but didn't commit to anything. Now this. I picked up the phone and called James Whitaker. That's not a random review, he said flatly. You're being flagged because someone accessed your ID to trace data, possibly as leverage, possibly to look legitimate for loan approval. Brandon, I whispered. I can't confirm that, James said carefully, but I'd start locking things down. By evening, the knock came at my apartment. Olivia stood there, shoulders hunched, holding a casserole dish like it was armor. We thought you might be tired of eating alone, she said softly. I opened the door, motioning her in. What's going on? She didn't answer until we were seated, plates untouched. I didn't know he made that call, she said quietly. The mortgage officer. He told me he just needed to verify family assets. I didn't think it meant dragging you into anything. So you knew about the cosigner request? She nodded. Not at first, but Brandon told me it was just a formality, that you'd be on the paperwork for a few months max. And when I say no, Olivia hesitated. He'll say we've lost our chance at the house. I studied her face, drawn, tired. She looked 10 years older than the last time we baked Christmas cookies together. Her lipstick was fresh, but her eyes had given up. You don't love that house, I said. You love what you think it solves. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, I'm scared, Mom. The kids are getting older. All their friends live in neighborhoods with gates and tennis courts. Brandon says appearances matter, for their future. Appearances matter to Brandon. You used to believe in substance. I still do, but her voice cracked. We sat in silence, the pear tart cooling in the background, the casserole untouched. Then she asked it, quietly, like a child hoping for a different bedtime story. Do you have the money? I didn't lie. Yes, but that's not the point. She nodded, slowly, like she already knew what I'd say. That night, I opened the safe Robert had left beneath our bed. Tucked beside the documents was a letter, handwritten, his neat accountant's script, but full of warmth. Ellie, if they ever try to push you, remind them you're not the soft one. You're the steel in the house. The next day, I dressed for war. Nothing flashy, just a crisp gray coat and the necklace Robert gave me the year we paid off our first mortgage. I needed to remember who I was. Brandon greeted me at the front door, all smiles again. "Eleanor, come in. The espresso machine's finally working. Try the latte foam." I walked past him without answering. Olivia was setting out pastries again. He launched into the pitch immediately. "We just heard from the bank. They'll hold the property for 48 more hours. We show up tomorrow with paperwork, we lock it in. And my signature is the only thing standing between us and a generational home." I stared at him. "And after I sign, what do I get?" Brandon blinked. "Get? You're asking me to leverage my financial security, my pension, my assets, for your third can't-miss investment? So what's in it for me?" "The guest house," he said smoothly. "Full access, 2-bedroom suite, private patio." "After being locked out of Thanksgiving?" His smile faded slightly. "Let's not bring up the past." "You made the past the price of admission, Brandon." Olivia flinched. "Mom." "No," I said, turning to her gently. "I love you, but this is the truth. I won't buy my way back into your family." Brandon stepped in, voice tighter now. "You'd have your independence, close to the kids. It's not just about the house, it's about legacy." I looked at him, and suddenly I didn't see a son-in-law. I saw a salesman cornered in his own pitch. "You don't want a co-signer," I said. "You want collateral, and you think love makes me too weak to say no." He didn't deny it, just adjusted his cuffs. "So is it a no?" he said. "It's a not yet." He raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning, I'll come to the showing tomorrow. I want to see what I'd be signing for." Brandon smiled again, confident he'd won the round. "Perfect. 12 noon. But as I walked away, Olivia followed me to the door. "Mom," she whispered, "if you say no tomorrow, he'll take it out on me." My chest tightened. "And if I say yes, you'll lose more of yourself." She looked down. "Maybe I already have." I hugged her. "It's not too late, for either of us." If you've ever had to choose between peace and self-respect, type 2 in the comments. Your voice matters. The house was even more extravagant in person than it had looked in the glossy photos. Cathedral ceilings, a 2-story library, imported marble countertops, and a saltwater pool that shimmered like glass under the December sun. It wasn't a home, it was a statement, one that screamed, "We've made it." Brandon guided me through the rooms like a realtor on commission. Olivia followed quietly, pointing at design details she thought I'd admire, but her eyes were dull, the sparkle forced. "So," Brandon said as we stepped into the oversized master suite, "can you see yourself here? Guest suite, just down the hall, your own entrance, everything private?" I looked out the window. The lake was still, cold. The trees surrounding it stood like witnesses. "It's beautiful," I said. "But that's not the same as saying yes." He didn't flinch. "The papers are in the car. I haven't even seen the loan terms." "Eleanor," he said with a tight smile, "you're letting fear get in the way of something transformative." "No, I'm letting experience get in the way of something manipulative." His jaw ticked, but he said nothing. Later that afternoon, back at my apartment, I brewed a cup of tea and opened the envelope James had dropped off. Inside was a preliminary report, his firm's investigation into Brandon's activities. At first, it read like background noise: overextended credit, declining ROI on a handful of past developments, a few back taxes delayed. But then came the page that made my hand shake. Private investor outreach, Jenkins legacy clients. Brandon had created a proposal deck, complete with my husband's name, reputation, and decades-old client list. It was presented as family-backed ventures secured by Eleanor Jenkins, educator and widow of Robert Jenkins. He had been shopping my name around, without my consent. And worse, he'd used Robert's archived client data, data that should have been locked, data Brandon never should have had access to. My breath caught. This wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. It was fraud. I called Olivia that evening. She didn't pick up. Instead, I received a text a few minutes later. He says we're too close to the finish line. Can we talk after the signing? After? I felt the rage crawl into my fingertips. At 9:12 p.m., I drove back to the house. Lights were still on. Inside, I found Brandon in the kitchen with a glass of scotch, barefoot, pacing. He didn't look surprised to see me. Can't sleep? He asked, gesturing toward the bottle. It's a big day tomorrow. I ignored him. You accessed Robert's client files. He blinked. Excuse me? You used his name, his clients, his credibility, without permission. You pitched fake partnerships with a trust fund you don't control. He laughed, short and sharp. Are you serious? I have proof. He set his glass down hard. I needed leverage, Eleanor. I have vision, but the banks want guarantees. You? You're sitting on assets while watching the world move on. I offered you a seat at the table. You forged the table. I built the table, he snapped. I worked for everything. Your husband made his fortune before I even met Olivia. I've had to climb through everything, gatekeepers, country clubs, fake smiles from guys who think I'll never belong. And you thought stealing his legacy would change that? I thought you might finally contribute. Those words, again, like last time, like a wound reopened. I contributed my whole life. I gave your children bedtime stories, tuition money, weekends of babysitting, and the only holidays that felt like home. But you don't want contribution, you want submission. His silence was a confirmation. I turned to leave. He called after me. If you walk away from this deal, don't expect to see your grandkids anytime soon. I paused. That's not your choice to make, I said, voice low. I'm their father. And I'm the one holding the real assets, I replied. You think this house is your legacy, but it's a liability. And tomorrow, I'll make sure the bank knows it. The next morning, I sent James's report to 2 places, the bank's loan officer and my lawyer, Thomas Chen. At noon, Brandon texted, "Where are you? The papers are here." I didn't reply. By 4 p.m., I received a call from Olivia. Her voice was flat. Why did the bank freeze our application? Ask your husband, I said quietly. He says you lied, that you sabotaged the deal out of spite. No, sweetheart. I protected you from a lie you were being dragged into. Silence on the other end, then a whisper. How much damage is done? I'm not sure, but Brandon's reputation with lenders is damaged. Permanently. I need time, she said. You have it, I said, but use it to protect the kids. She hung up, and for the first time in weeks, I breathed. If you've ever been manipulated with guilt or love as currency, type 3 in the comments. You're not alone. The knock on my apartment door came just after 7 a.m. I wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not her. Diane Parker stood in a navy wool coat, lipstick flawless, her platinum blonde hair pulled into an expensive twist. She held a thermal coffee tumbler in one hand and a manila folder in the other, like a socialite crossed with a lawyer. May I come in? She asked sweetly, stepping forward before I could answer. I let her. She made herself comfortable on my couch, crossed her legs, and placed the folder neatly on the coffee table. We're both women of a certain age, she began, as if this were afternoon tea. We know the game. We know men will scramble and postulate, but at the end of the day, who really moves the pieces? I said nothing. She smiled. This little situation with Brandon, it's gotten a bit theatrical, don't you think? If you're here to ask me to reconsider signing... No, she interrupted, raising a gloved hand. I'm here to ask you to rethink the consequences of what you've already set in motion. I narrowed my eyes. Brandon has made mistakes, she said, smoothing the lapel of her coat. But which man hasn't? My late husband lost $2.5 million in a cattle futures scam. I didn't throw him to the wolves. He didn't commit mortgage fraud using your dead son-in-law's legacy. Details. She waved dismissively. What matters is that the family remains intact, that the public face of things stays dignified. And what are you offering in return for my silence? She smiled again, as if we were finally getting to the heart of it. A buyout. Brandon will remove your name from all future filings. Olivia has agreed to keep the children's schedule flexible, grandparent time every other week. And you'll receive a discretionary fund, one-time transfer, no questions asked. How much? 300,000. I laughed. Not because the number was low, but because she thought I could be bought. I'm not interested, I said. And you might want to call your son. He'll be receiving a cease and desist letter by noon today, along with copies of the trust violation documents. Her lips tightened. For the first time, she lost her socialite calm. You're burning a bridge that can't be rebuilt. No, I replied. I'm tearing down a trap disguised as a bridge. The next 48 hours were a blur of legal filings. My lawyer, Thomas Chen, submitted a formal complaint against Brandon for unauthorized use of client data, misrepresentation in investor materials, and attempted coercion of a senior citizen for financial liability. The trust Robert had created, which Brandon had tried to undermine, was finally unsealed. It revealed $7 million allocated exclusively to me, with explicit language barring any family member by marriage from accessing it without my notarized consent. Brandon was livid. He called me. Twice. I didn't answer. Then Olivia called. Her voice was strained. Mom, he's panicking. The investors are backing out. The house deal's dead. He's saying you ruined everything. Did I? I asked softly. Or did I just remove the mask? She didn't answer right away. When she spoke, her voice cracked. He emptied Max's college fund, Mom, without telling me? That's how deep in debt he is. I closed my eyes. Oh, Olivia. I found receipts, private withdrawals. He's been borrowing under our names, even the children's trust accounts. He forged my signature, twice. I waited, letting the silence work. I'm staying at a friend's, she said. The kids are with me. I filed for legal separation this morning. I nodded. I'm proud of you. The next week was a storm of lawyers, filings, and depositions. Brandon's company, a boutique real estate group, collapsed under scrutiny. Once the investor trust was lost, the loans defaulted. His reputation, so carefully crafted, eroded overnight. He tried to spin it, claimed he was the victim of overzealous regulation and family betrayal. But the paper trail was too damning. His brokerage license was suspended, then revoked. I didn't gloat, but I also didn't flinch. Meanwhile, I set up a new trust, one managed independently from Olivia or Brandon, with funding earmarked for Max and Sophie's education, housing, and healthcare. They would be protected. Olivia sent me a photo later that month. The kids in snow boots, building a snowman in a tiny backyard of a rental house. No marble floors, no lake view, just genuine smiles. Under the photo, she wrote, "This is the first time they've laughed without tension in over a year." I framed it. 2 weeks later, I was sipping tea at my kitchen window when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Static. Then a voice. You think this is over? Brandon's voice hissed. It's not. I know things. About you. About Robert. You're not as untouchable as you think. Click. I set the phone down gently. The kettle whistled behind me, and outside the wind picked up, but I didn't feel cold. If you've ever had to reclaim your dignity one decision at a time, type 4 in the comments. Strength comes quietly, but it echoes loud.